Today we are discussing the novel Pride and Prejudice written by Jane Austen. The Jane Austen is one of the greatest novelists of England. Her greatness as a novelist has been acclaimed by critics old and new. Her eximious carving on 2 inches ivory was much appreciated by Scott, her contemporary. Scott said that young lady has a talent for describing the involvement, feelings, and characters of ordinary life, which is to me the most wonderful I ever met with. Bow strain I can do myself, like any now going, but the exquisite touch which renders some place, things, and characters interesting from the truth of the description and the sentiment is denied to me. So it is such a gifted creature died so early. So Beatrice can Summer rides in a society that has enthroned the machine gun and carried it aloof even into the quiet events. There will always be men and women, escapists or not as you please, who will turn her novels with an unending sense of relief of thankfulness. Jane Austen learned a great deal about the art of fiction from her illustrious predecessors. She brought to perfection a type of writing that may be called the domestic novel. Scott needed an enormous canvas to sketch the historical events, and hers was limited area. What we find in her novel is the artistic mastery of limited materials. The subject matter may be limited, the manners of a small section of English people who apparently never have been worried about death or sex, hunger or war, guilt or God. But the 2 inches of ivory, though it may be resemble the handle of lady's fan looked on scantily, is in substance an elephant's tusk. It is a savage, probing instrument as well as masterpiece of refinement. Even though our circle is limited, it is complete. Our world is a perfect art and vital. So Dr. Johnson, the most forthright in English and the authority which informs every sentences Johnson wrote the authority which comes vast experience of life, massive common sense of an integrity. Jane Austen made use of comic irony. She maintained an attitude of good humored irony towards her character. She believed in realism. We find in her novels neither monarch nor saints, recognizable, unextraordinary individuals are the subject of the writer's intense moral psychological explorations. Her clear-sighted eyes read through the inner minds of those who live around her, of the characters she invents and animates, just as if their minds are pellucid. Unlike her predecessors, Fielding and Fanny Burney, who anticipated in some respects, Jane Austen was the first English novel to confront the intrinsic challenges of the form which she has so successfully employed in Pride and Prejudice. So the novels of Jane Austen indicate that she was greatly influenced by the drama. Many of her dialogues are so dramatic that they would be effective on the stage. A critic points out you must look behind novelistic considerations for the pacing book are at least as closely connected to certain classic stage comedies. The Pride and Prejudice, many scenes of elegantly balanced repartee point backward in time toward hungry and comedy of manners, but other essential elements point still further backward toward romantic comedies of Shakespeare. So Jane Austen, as an objective spectator of life never admitting her personality protrude into her works. Her novels do not tell much about her, but critics are of the opinion that Jane Austen has played Elizabeth, the heroine of Pride and Prejudice, exactly in her own image. She was charming, cheerful, and witty. She had unusual vigor of mind and a keen sense of humor. The great love between Elizabeth and Jane remains one of the close relation between Aston and her sister. So introduction, I gave the introduction to Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is usually regarded as the best of the novel in point of liveliness, of style, neatness of structure, and vigor of substance. It was Jane Austen's favorite book. It remained alive, its hero and heroine perpetually interesting. She wrote about Elizabeth Bennet. I must confess that I think her as delightful a creature as ever appeared in point, and how I shall be able to tolerate those who do not like her, at least I do not know. A Walton Leeds pointed out, we cannot think of Pride and Prejudice as belonging to any one period of Jane Austen's life before 1813. Rather, it was a summing of her artistic career, a valedictory to the world of sense and sensibility, and a token of things to come. There has always been a contention about the first place in her between Pride and Prejudice and Emma, though some prefer Mansfield Park. Pride and Prejudice is a popular, but Emma is better admired by the scholarly and sophisticated class of readers. Jane Austen's admiration of Fanny Burney is well known. Pride and Prejudice owes a great deal to Cecilia. Fanny Burney's fiction is filled with figures who remind us of Lydia or Mrs. Contest between personal affection and family pride in Cecilia may have suggested the major themes of Pride and Prejudice. The title was taken from the ending of Cecilia when Dr. Lister points out moral of the story. Moral of the story. So, Pride and Prejudice, they are endowed with such quantity of felt life and absorbed so deftly into the drama that they took on a new import. It is this transformation of familiar materials which yields one of the novel's chief pleasure, the sense of subtle variations within a fixed and traditional range. Pride and Prejudice bears that hallmark of classic art, the discovery of new possibility within a traditional form. The story, I give deep introduction about the story. In Pride and Prejudice is the typical romantic comedy of Shakespeare. We find the we find the uneasy and uncertain wooings, elaborate formal balancing of characters around the themes of love, final revelations, reconciliations, and irresistible joyous conclusion. Above all, we find an engaging young woman whose audacity and brightness make things happen, yet who must learn to see herself of the contemporary victim of her own inventions, and who in end willingly submits her cleverness to the higher claims of the Bennet family at Longbourn. The village in which the Bennets live consisted of Mrs. and Mr. Bennet and their five daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Catherine, and Lydia. Mrs. Bennet was eagerly looking forward to prospective sons-in-law. The Bennet family in particular, as well as all Longbourn, was excited when Netherfield Park, the great place of the neighborhood, was led to Wellesley. It became known that Mr. Bingley and his party, consisting of his two sisters, Erst and friend Mr. Darcy, were to attend the forthcoming ball at the assembly rooms. While Mr. Bingley danced with Jane, Darcy declined to do the same with Elizabeth. Mr. Bingley seemed to have fallen in love with beautiful, amiable Jane. Darcy displayed a pride, a keen of his character, which the girls and the villagers considered arrogant. But all sudden prospects of Bingley marrying Jane seemed to vanish, for he left for London and the establishment at Netherfield was terminated. The real reason for the breakup of this romance were Darcy and Mr. Bingley's own sister. Darcy, who noted the ill breeding of the Bennet family, felt that it would be in for his friend to marry anyone from the Bennet family. These Miss Bingley felt that if her brother married Darcy's sister, she herself could marry Darcy. These two characters schemed so well that when Jane was in London, Mr. Bingley walked away from her. Mrs. Bennet had to face disappointment twice. First was the sad interruption for eldest daughter's romance. The other was Elizabeth's rejection of the offer of marriage made by the servile, stupid, comical Mr. Collins. It was with embittered feelings that Mrs. Bennet saw Mr. Collins leading up to unspoiled as his wife Charlotte, the eldest daughter of the Lucases. When Elizabeth visited Charlotte Lucas, now Mrs. Collins, she met Darcy again. Darcy had come on a visit to his aunt later in there was a revival of his love for her one day. Darcy suddenly declared his love, and this was a painful surprise to Elizabeth, who despised Darcy. Elizabeth's feeling against him were increased by her doubts that he had caused Bingley to give up Jane. One more factor contributed was the report she had heard from Mr. Wickham, a handsome officer of the regiment stationed for someone at Meriton, that Darcy had failed to keep up certain promises made to him. Elizabeth rejected him and told him why she accused him of ungenerous conduct of Wickham and to Jane. This clash between pride and prejudice was violent. Darcy left the place but left a letter in which he announced that he had not known that Jane was deeply in love with Bingley and disclosed that Wickham had been treated well but had repaid Darcy by sluggishness. Elizabeth now realized how she had misconceived the character of Darcy. A few months later, when she paid a visit to Pemberley Estates with the gardeners, she was brought face to face with the true excellence Darcy's character. When Elizabeth had just begun to incline towards Darcy, news arrived that as Lydia has eloped with Wickham and that they were living together, though unmarried. By now, Darcy's pride had been conquered by his love for Elizabeth, and he played a vital role in tracing the eloped couple. It was Darcy who persuaded Wickham to accept Lydia by paying up £1,000 of his debts, buying him an army commission, and settling another £1,000 on Lydia. Lady Catherine Bode heard rumors of an engagement between you and Elizabeth. She landed at Longbourn and pounced on Elizabeth in a private talk and demanded that she should give up the man destined for her daughter. When Elizabeth refused to give an undertaking, the lady departed in anger and reported the obstinate behavior of Elizabeth to Darcy, hoping to damage the image of Elizabeth. But this piece of news newly encouraged Darcy to renew his offer of marriage to Elizabeth. He was joyfully accepted. The novel is about the movement of two people who are impelled apart until the reach of climax of mutual hostility and thereafter bend their courses towards mutual understanding and amity. Jane is also engaged to Bingley, leaving the Bennets with only two unmarried daughters on their hands. Of these, Mary, with her studious, unpalatable ways, stood a chance of finding a partner. But Catherine would put into a pleasant young lady, the guidance of her elder sisters, seemed to have a better chance. Note the compactness of plan and careful arrangement of the plot. The events and incidents are introduced evidently in support of characterization, but the interest and suspense are sustained at the end. Troubles and misunderstandings which begin and multiply in section of the novel and happy conclusion. So remember, turns upon the complications brought about by the Fried and Dark and prejudice of Elizabeth. As we go through the story, we see how Elizabeth and Darcy had to suffer for their prejudice and pride, and how they could not attain happiness until they had conquered these two defects that they display so prominently in the early part of the novel. In the early part of the novel. So it is about the outlook story of the uh, it is the comic irony of the novel is so it is here the first impression was that little Jane Austen first gave this to this novel, but later the title was changed to the present Pride and Prejudice. The change of the title reveals the growth of her art. The title is very appropriate. It sums up the notable traits of the hero and the heroine of the novel, were Darcy and Elizabeth. Darcy is an embodiment of right. He is conscious of his own importance and has belief in his own superiority. He looks down upon commonplace society with pride. When he falls in love with Elizabeth, his discretion warns him against falling in love with a social inferior. He earnestly tries to arrest it, but his love for her is too strong and he proposes to her. Even while making an avowal of marriage, his pride is in the forefront and he acts unwisely. He describes himself as an unwilling lover, infuriated. Elizabeth spurns him and accuses him of mean behavior. Elizabeth's reaction is shocking to him and he tries to mend his manners. He realizes that he has been selfish all through his life and he begins to please others, especially Elizabeth and her family. Darcy is transformed into generous, courteous gentleman. The hero had given up his pride before his character could the pleasantest disposition. Similarly, Elizabeth has to get rid of a flaw before she can be happy in life. This weakness is a susceptibility to prejudice. In fact, the central situation of the novel is the growth of Elizabeth's prejudice and then its steady change into love. Every character and episode deepen a misunderstanding. At first is Darcy's flamboyant rudeness at Meriton Assembly, where he makes uncomplimentary remarks on her beauty. Elizabeth next meets Wickham, who presents Darcy in bad light. This antipathy is further augmented by her doubt that Darcy has played a role in undoing Jane's happiness by keeping Mr. Bingley away from her. So it is at this stage when Elizabeth is strongly prejudiced against Darcy that he proposes to her. Elizabeth not only rejects him but accuses him of his meanness to her sister and to Mr. Wickham. Elizabeth's taunt procedure produces the right result. Darcy begins to judge people not according to their social status but as human beings. Elizabeth is brought vice versa with Darcy's true character. She realizes that she has misconceived the character of both Wickham and Darcy. She begins to regard and love him accordingly. Darcy and Elizabeth see one another for the first time in favorable, even flattering circumstances. He at his best on his own estate, and she among congenial companions, now with mollified characters, the one free of the part of his pride, and the other free from the prejudices that have to unwind the latter into error. The interaction of character and circumstances makes the marriage inevitable. Darcy and Elizabeth. We find a resolution of conflict, and as pointed out by Walton, it is a union rather than a compromise. It's a union in which both parties gain novel vigor and freedom of expression. The marriage of Elizabeth and Darcy resolves not only their personal differences but the conflicts they have represented. It is, in a sense, of union of opposites, without harming the identity of either. The novel produces a final picture of happiness, a sense of complete fulfillment, analogs to that which marks the end of some musical compositions. In his penetrating essay on Mansfield Park, Lionel Trilling defines the unique quality of distinguishes Pride and Prejudice from Jane Austen others' work. So Jane Austen rises to heights of comic rating in certain uh, significant passages in Pride and Prejudice. Indeed, may be said that one of the greatest charms of the novel is derived from the gentle, ironical humor is describing people and situations. There are two different strains in Jane Austen. She is a moralist and a humorist. These strains are often blended or even completely fused, but still they may be distinguished. In all her novels, though in varying degrees, Jane Austen regards the characters, good and bad, alike with ironical amusement because they never see the situation as it really is and as she sees it. So, so the next, the comic, it's a domestic comedy. The norm of techniques of domestic comedy reaches perfection. Jane Austen once said that three or four families in a country where there were things to work on. Pride and Prejudice is concerned only with everyday happiness, happenings in lives of people who rarely came into contact with anyone outside their narrow range of experience. All the incidents in the novel revolve around ordinary domestic life. The dreary notes of tragedy, a melodrama, never obtrude a artless narrative of the agonies and ecstasies of human life. An elopement is the most adverse situation to which her plot leads. So Jane Austen is not sentimental and she does not go to the extremes of some of her contemporaries. It is a sin for passion to vanquish others, as pointed out in the introduction to this text. And then we do not find the downfall of heroes or empires. There is no references to the stirring incidents of their day. She is not interested in criminal passion and impulses. She is able to weave out all romance and comedy out of commonplace events in country home. Marriage occupies the central place in Jane Austen's domestic comedies. Different types of marriages are portrayed in the novel. As a love story, the novel is tender with love's misunderstandings and reconciliations, a chain of dramatic situations made gripping by the plans and jealousies of mediators and courtiers lead the plot of marriage. How many such situations are there in Elizabeth's career? The way in which Jane Austen has molded the homely incidents into gripping comedies is worthy of admiration. Only genius can produce such excellent novels out of the tattle and trivialities of a small country town. So town where the time a tea time was an exciting event, subscription ball was a crisis of careers. There were romances expressed itself on contrary works, even of accompanied with charm, where tragedy hinged upon the absence of agreeable young man who danced so well. It is so mean and achievement of contrast a worthwhile novel from such in commonplace incidents. Jane Austen novels are the classics of home life. Characters in the novel are ordinary men and women. Her novels are impeccable domestic comedies of characters whom we know in common life, acting in situations which are true to life. The scene in the action in all novels of Jane Austen is restricted to Hampshire, a small tract of land in southwest England. Pride and Prejudice, you find Elizabeth touring Derbyshire, a clear 100 miles from Hampshire. Sometimes the scene is laid at Bath. Jane Austen's character from what is known as the upper middle class. She does not choose characters belonging to the higher or lower ranks of society. So focus your attention upon this narrow circle. Jane Austen throws light on their everyday routine, their little aspiration, their views and jealousies. We have crude mothers like Mrs. Bennet who are busy planning balls, tea and dinner parties. These are arranged to promote matchmaking. Matchmaking. That though Jane Austen does not explicitly dwell on a moment on the matters of social history, it does provide the ambience of her work. Scaraf affirmed that social setting of all her novels is one which a feudalistic order that does not know that it is dying and Borgias of mercantile order that is not yet confident it quite alive with the conflicts and something merge. So it's about the some social verdict depicted in the novel. Tomorrow we are discussing other characters and about the novel. Okay, see you. Bye.